The sky above Kethro 7 burned orange and black as explosions tore through the barren landscape. Danny Martinez crouched behind a broken wall, his rifle pressed against his shoulder while sweat dripped down his face despite the cold desert air around him. He was 22 years old and had been in this war for 8 months. Though it felt like 8 years, the Kryn Empire had pushed hard into coalition space and humanity had pushed back just as hard now. Both sides were bleeding on this worthless rock that nobody would remember in 100 years. Martinez, keep your head down, Sergeant Williams shouted from somewhere to his left. Danny ducked as plasma fire screamed overhead, melting the stone where his head had been moments before. His squad was pinned down and had been for 3 hours. The Kryn warriors were fierce fighters, their 4 arms wielding weapons with terrifying efficiency, while their scaled bodies shrugged off hits that would drop a human. Danny fired 3 quick shots at a Kryn position across the valley and saw one warrior stumble back. He felt sick even as he did it. This whole war felt wrong to him. But he was a Marine, and he had his orders. The ground shook as an artillery shell landed 50 meters away, throwing dirt and rocks into the air. When the debris settled, Danny heard something that made his blood run cold. It was crying, not human crying, but the high-pitched whine of a Kryn in distress. Danny peered over the wall carefully and saw the source in the middle of no man's land. Trapped under a collapsed beam from some destroyed structure was a young Kryn warrior. Even from this distance, Danny could see the alien was barely more than a kid. His armor was too big for his frame, and one of his forearms hung at a wrong angle. The young Kryn was crying out in his own language, probably calling for help that wouldn't come. Both sides were too busy killing each other to rescue anyone. Martinez, what are you looking at? Williams called out. There's a kid out there, Sarge. Danny replied. Forget it. That's the enemy. He's just a kid. So we're half the Kryn who killed Davis and Cooper last week. Now keep your eyes on your sector. Danny tried to follow orders. He really did. But every few seconds his eyes drifted back to that trapped alien who's getting weaker with each passing minute. The young Kryn had stopped crying out and was now just whimpering softly. Danny thought about his own younger brother back home, barely 18 and still in high school. He thought about how scared that kid would be, trapped and alone while a battle raged around him. He thought about how wrong it felt to just watch someone die when he could help. I'm going out there, Danny said quietly. You're what? Williams stared at him like he'd gone insane. I'm going to get him. That's suicide, Martinez. And it's also treason. Then court-martial me when I get back. Before anyone could stop him, Danny vaulted over the wall and sprinted toward the trapped Kryn. Weapons fire erupted from both sides, though he couldn't tell if they were shooting at him or just continuing their battle. His legs pumped hard as he zigzagged across the torn ground. Plasma bolts scorched the air around him and he felt the heat on his skin. He dove the last few meters and slid up against the beam that pinned the young Kryn up close. The alien looked even younger than Danny had thought. His scales were lighter in color, probably meaning he wasn't fully grown. His eyes were wide with fear and pain, a bright yellow color that reminded Danny of sunflowers. Hey, it's okay, Danny said softly, knowing the alien couldn't understand, but hoping his tone would help. The young Kryn flinched back, trying to raise his weapon with his one good arm. Danny gently pushed the weapon aside. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to help. He examined the beam carefully. It was made of some kind of metal alloy and was pinning the Kryn's lower body. Danny braced his feet and grabbed the beam with both hands. He pulled with everything he had, his muscles screaming in protest. The beam shifted slightly. The young Kryn made a sound that might have been surprised. Danny pulled again, harder this time, his vision going red at the edges from the effort. The beam moved more, and the Kryn managed to drag himself partially free. One more pull, and Danny heaved the beam aside completely. He grabbed the young alien and dragged him behind a nearby rock outcropping that offered some protection. The Kryn was lighter than Danny expected. Probably because of his youth, Danny pulled out his basic medical kit and started working on the injured arm. The anatomy was different, but he could see where the bone was broken. He splinted it as best he could while the young Kryn watched him with those yellow eyes. The alien said something in his own language, his voice shaky but earnest. Danny didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. "You're welcome, kid," he replied. He checked the rest of the alien's injuries, bruises, cuts, probably a concussion, but nothing immediately fatal now that he was free. The young Kryn reached out with one of his good hands and touched Danny's face gently, as if memorizing it. Their eyes met, and Danny saw intelligence there. Fear, yes, but also gratitude and something else, recognition maybe, or understanding that not all enemies were evil. An explosion nearby reminded Danny that he was in the middle of a war zone. "I have to go," he said. Young Kryn seemed to understand. He made a gesture that looked like a salute or maybe a blessing. Danny nodded and prepared to run back to his lines. As he started to move, the young Kryn called out something. Danny turned back briefly and saw the alien pointing at himself and saying what must have been his name, Vexthel. It sounded like Danny pointed at himself. Danny. Then he ran the sprint back to his lines. Was even more terrifying than the sprint out. He felt like every weapon on the planet was aimed at him. He hit the ground hard as he dove over the wall, and Williams grabbed him by his vest. "You're the craziest Marine I've ever met," the sergeant said. But there was respect in his voice. Danny looked back toward the rock outcropping. The young Kryn was gone, probably pulled back to his own lines. He hoped the kid would be okay. "Did you really just save an enemy soldier?" Private Lewis asked in disbelief. "I saved the kid," Danny replied. The battle continued for another 2 hours before both sides withdrew. 3 months later, the war ended with a peace treaty. Danny went home to Earth and tried to forget the things he'd seen and done, but he never forgot those yellow eyes watching him as he ran back across no man's land. Never forgot the feeling of doing one good thing in the middle of all that death. He never imagined he would see Vexthel again. That brief moment of compassion in the chaos of war seemed like it would be lost to history. Just another small act that nobody would remember. Danny was wrong about that. 20 years had passed since the war ended, and Danny Martinez was a different person now. He was 42 years old, with gray starting to show at his temples, and he made his living hauling cargo between stations in neutral space. The work was honest and quiet, which was exactly what he wanted after the noise and chaos of combat. His ship, the Betty Lou, was old but reliable, and his co-pilot, Katie Sullivan, was one of the few people he truly trusted. "We're coming up on Harmony 9, Katie announced from the pilot's seat. "How long until we dock?" Danny asked from the cargo bay, where he was checking their delivery manifest. 20 minutes, give or take. Harmony 9 was one of the big diplomatic stations, a massive structure floating in neutral space where humans, Kryn, and a dozen other species met to talk instead of fight. Danny had been here a few times before and never liked it much. Too many politicians, too many people pretending the war had never happened. He preferred the empty spaces between stars where nobody asked questions about his past. The Betty Lou shuddered slightly as they entered the docking sequence. Danny secured the cargo containers and made sure everything was ready for unloading. This run with special medical supplies for the station's hospital, stuff that had to be kept cold and handled carefully. Katie brought them in smooth and gentle. Barely a bump as the docking clamps engaged. "Nice landing," Danny called out. "I'm a professional," Katie replied with a grin. They opened the cargo bay doors and Danny started guiding the first container out on its hover platform. Station's loading dock was busy as always. With ships coming and going and dock workers shouting instructions to each other, Danny was halfway through unloading when he heard a voice behind him. "Excuse me, are you Danny Martinez?" The voice was speaking English, but with an accent that made Danny's spine go rigid. It was a Kryn accent. He turned slowly and saw a well-dressed Kryn standing there with 3 other Kryn behind him. This one was tall even for his species. His scales a deep green color that spoke of maturity and status. Wore what looked like diplomatic robes, and his forearms were held in a formal posture. "Yeah, I'm Martinez," Danny said carefully. "Who's asking?" The Kryn's yellow eyes went wide, and he made a sound that might have been a gasp. Then he did something Danny had never seen a Kryn do before. He dropped to his knees. "Danny," the Kryn said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Danny Martinez, do you remember me?" Danny stared at the kneeling alien and felt his mind racing. There had been a lot of Kryn during the war. He'd fought dozens of them and killed some too. How was he supposed to remember one specific alien from 20 years ago? "I'm sorry, I don't." Kethra 7. The Kryn interrupted. The battle in the valley where the sky was orange. There was a young warrior trapped under a beam, and you saved him even though he was your enemy. The memory hit Danny like a physical blow. Yellow eyes, a kid crying under a broken beam. The insane sprint across no man's land. Vexthel? Danny whispered. The Kryn stood up quickly, all 4 arms reaching out, but stopping just short of touching Danny. Yes, it is me. I have been searching for you for so many years." Katie had come out of the ship and was watching this exchange with wide eyes. "Danny, you want to tell me what's going on?" "I saved his life during the war," Danny said. "Still trying to process this. I pulled him out from under some debris." "You did more than that," Vexthel said intensely. "You gave me everything. You gave me my life when you had no reason to. When I was your enemy and you should have left me to die." Danny felt uncomfortable with the weight of those words. "I just did what anyone would do." "No." Vexthel shook his head. "No, not anyone. Most humans left Kryn to die, and most Kryn left humans to die. That is what war is. But you were different." One of the other Kryn stepped forward and spoke in their language. Evestal nodded and turned back to Danny. "Forgive me. I have not introduced myself properly. I am Ambassador Vexthel of the Kryn Diplomatic Corps. Assigned to Harmony 9, Ambassador?" Danny felt his eyebrows rise. "You're a long way from that battlefield. Because of you," Vexthel said. "After you saved me, I survived to fight more battles and became known as a warrior. When the war ended, I became a peacemaker because I had seen that even enemies could show mercy. I became ambassador because I wanted to find the human who taught me that compassion was stronger than hate." Danny didn't know what to say to that. Spent 20 years trying to forget the war, and here it was, staring at him with yellow eyes and calling him a hero. "Listen, I appreciate you remembering me, but I'm just a cargo pilot now. I need to finish unloading, and, please," Vexthel interrupted, and his voice was almost desperate. "Please allow me to honor you properly. In my culture, a life debt is sacred, and I have owed you for 20 years. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything." Vexthel's voice rose and several nearby workers turned to look. "My life, my career, my family, all of it exists because you chose mercy over hate. Please let me repay this debt." Katie touched Danny's arm gently. "You know Kryn culture takes this stuff really seriously, right? If he's been looking for you for 20 years, he's not going to just let this go." Danny sighed. He really didn't want to deal with this. Didn't want to remember that day or that war or any of it, but looking at Vexthel's earnest face, he remembered the scared kid under that beam. "One dinner," he said finally. "I'll have dinner with you. We'll catch up, and then we call it even. Okay?" Vexthel's whole body seemed to relax with relief. "Thank you. Thank you, Danny Martinez. I will arrange everything. Please finish your work and then come to the diplomatic quarter." Any guard can direct you to my chambers. He pressed something into Danny's hand. It was a small badge with diplomatic markings. This will get you through security. Then Vextheel and his entourage left. Though the ambassador kept looking back at Danny, like he was afraid he might disappear, Katie whistled low. Well, that was intense. You never told me you were a war hero. I'm not. Danny said quietly. I just helped one kid one time. That kid seems to think you're pretty important. Danny looked down at the badge in his hand. Part of him wanted to throw it away and leave the station as soon as the cargo was unloaded. But another part, a part he'd tried to bury for 20 years, was curious what had happened to that scared young warrior. How had he become an ambassador? And why did it matter so much to him to find Danny after all this time? Come on, Katie said gently. Let's finish unloading. Then you're going to that dinner and I'm coming with you. You don't have to. Someone needs to make sure you don't run away. Danny smiled despite himself. Yeah. Okay. As they worked, Danny found his mind drifting back to Kethru 7. He'd thought that moment was forgotten. Lost in the chaos of a war nobody wanted to remember, but Vextheel had remembered for 20 years. He'd remembered, and somehow, that changed everything. The diplomatic quarter of Harmony 9 was nothing like the industrial docking bay, where Danny spent most of his time. Here, everything was clean and quiet, with soft lighting and air that smelled faintly of flowers instead of engine oil. Guards in formal uniforms checked Danny's badge and Katie's credentials before allowing them through. A young Kryn aide greeted them and led them through hallways decorated with art from a dozen different worlds. Ambassador Vextheel is very honored by your presence, the aide said in careful English. He has spoken of little else since learning you were on the station. Danny shifted uncomfortably in his clean shirt. Wishing he was back on his ship, they reached a set of large doors that opened into a dining room that took Danny's breath away. One wall was entirely transparent, showing the stars beyond the station in all their glory. Table was set with dishes from multiple cultures, and Vextheel stood waiting, now wearing more casual robes. Danny, Katie, please come in. Vextheel gestured with two of his arms. I have prepared food from both our peoples. I hope something will be to your liking. As they sat down, another human entered the room. He was older, maybe 60, with the patient air of someone who'd spent years in diplomatic service. This is Ambassador Chen Wei, Vextheel introduced. He has helped me search for you and has agreed to join us to help with any translation or cultural misunderstanding. Chen shook Danny's hand warmly. It's an honor to meet you. Captain Martinez, Vextheel has told me a great deal about what you did. I'm not a captain anymore, Danny said. Just a cargo pilot. They began eating, and at first the conversation was light. Vextheel asked about Danny's life, his ship, his work. Danny kept his answers brief. Still uncomfortable with all the attention, Katie filled in the gaps, telling stories about their cargo runs and close calls in asteroid fields. But, eventually, the conversation turned to what they both knew it had to address. I need you to understand what you did for me, Vextheel said, setting down his utensils. In Kryn culture, life is the most sacred gift. When you saved me, you gave me everything I am and everything I will ever be. I just pulled you out from under a beam. Danny protested. I would have done the same for anyone. But that is exactly what makes it so meaningful. Vextheel leaned forward intensely. You did not save me because I was important or because you would gain something from it. You saved me because I was a person in need, and you could not walk away from that. Chun spoke up gently. Danny, in Kryn culture, a life debt can only be repaid by saving the life of your savior. Until Vextheel can do that, he carries an enormous burden. Danny felt a chill run down his spine. Wait, you're saying he's been searching for me just so he can save my life? Just so? Vextheel's voice rose. Danny, without you, I would have died alone and forgotten on that battlefield. Instead, I lived to become a warrior of honor. I led my unit through 3 more battles and saved 12 of my brothers. When the war ended, I was chosen to help negotiate peace because I understood that humans could be merciful. He stood up and began pacing, all 4 arms gesturing as he spoke. I married and have 2 children who would not exist without you. I became ambassador and have helped prevent 2 conflicts that could have reignited the war. My entire clan honors your name, even though they have never met you, because you are the reason their son and brother still lives. The weight of those words settled over Danny like a heavy blanket. He never thought about what happened after he ran back to his lines, assumed the kid either died or went home and forgot. About the crazy human who'd saved him, I never knew. Danny said quietly, "How could you?" Vexthel returned to his seat. "You ran back to your war, and I returned to mine. But I never forgot your face or your name. You said it to me, Danny." And I held on to that word like a treasure. Katie was watching Danny with concern. "You okay?" "I killed Kryn soldiers in that battle," Danny said, looking at Vexthel. "Before and after I saved you, I killed people from your side. Doesn't that matter?" Vexthel was quiet for a moment. "War is war," he said finally. "We were both soldiers following orders, trying to survive. I killed humans too, and I carry that weight. But war and mercy are not the same thing. You had a choice," Chan added, "in the middle of combat. With your life in danger, you chose to save someone who was supposed to be your enemy. That transcends the violence of war." Danny felt something tight in his chest beginning to loosen. For 20 years, he'd carried guilt about the things he'd done in the war, tried to bury it by living quietly, by avoiding other veterans, by pretending it hadn't happened. But here was someone who'd been there, who understood. "I have nightmares sometimes," Danny admitted, "about the people I hurt, about the things I saw." "As do I," Vexthel said softly. "But I also dream of you sometimes. Running across that battlefield like death itself could not stop you, pulling me free and treating my wounds with gentle hands, even though minutes before you had been fighting my brothers. That moment showed me that we are all people." Vexthel continued, "Kryn, human, all of us capable of both violence and compassion. And that compassion is what we should choose." Danny found himself smiling despite the tears in his eyes. "You became an ambassador because of one stupid decision I made?" "Not stupid," Vexthel corrected. "Brave, compassionate. Human in the best sense of that word." He reached into his robes and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. "I want to give you something." Vexthel unwrapped the cloth to reveal a blade. It was beautiful. The metal worked in patterns that seemed to flow like water. The handle was designed for Kryn hands, but Danny could see it'd been modified. "This is my family's honor blade," Vexthel said. "It has been passed down for 6 generations. My father gave it to me when I became a warrior, and I want you to have it." "I can't take that," Danny protested. "It's a family heirloom." "You are family," Vexthel said simply, "in every way that matters. You are my brother in spirit, if not in blood. Please accept this," Katie nudged Danny. "Take the blade." "You stubborn man." Danny reached out and accepted the weapon carefully. It was lighter than he expected and balanced perfectly. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't deserve this, but thank you. You deserve more than I could ever give." Vexthel replied. They talked for hours after that, the conversation flowing more easily. Thal told stories about his family and his work. Danny found himself sharing things he hadn't talked about in years. Katie and Chun traded diplomatic gossip, while the other 2 bonded as the evening drew to a close. Danny realized something. He felt lighter than he had in 20 years. The guilt was still there, but it was balanced now by the knowledge that he'd done something good, that one act of mercy had rippled outward in ways he'd never imagined. "I'm glad I found you," Vexthel said as they prepared to leave. "As am I," Danny admitted. I didn't want to come tonight, but I'm glad Katie made me. Hey, I'm full of good ideas. Katie grinned as Thol walked them to the door. Will you stay on the station for a few days? I would like to spend more time with you. We've got another cargo run in 3 days, Danny said, but until then, yeah, we can stay. Excellent. I will show you the station, introduce you to others. We have much to discuss. As Danny and Katie walked back through the diplomatic quarter, Danny kept touching the blade at his side. You made a good friend today, Katie observed. Yeah, Danny agreed. I think I did. What he didn't know was that their friendship was about to be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. But for now, walking through the quiet halls of Harmony 9 with the stars shining through the viewports, Danny felt something he hadn't felt since before the war. He felt at peace. The alarm started screaming at 0300. Station time, and Danny was out of bed before his brain fully processed what was happening. Old combat instincts died hard. He grabbed his clothes and was pulling them on when Katie's voice came through his comm unit. Danny, we've got a situation. Get to the ship now. What's going on? Pirates, a whole fleet of them. They're boarding the station. Danny's blood went cold. Harmony 9 was supposed to be neutral ground, protected by treaties and mutual interest. An attack here was an act of war against everyone. He ran through the corridors of the guest quarters, seeing other residents in various states of panic. Some were hiding in their rooms while others were running toward the escape pods. Danny went the other way, toward the docking bay where the Betty Lou waited. The station shuddered, and Danny heard the distant sound of explosions. He rounded a corner and nearly ran into a group of security officers. Civilian. Get to a shelter. One of them shouted. I'm a pilot. I can help evacuate people. The docking bays are compromised. Pirates are coming through there. Get to shelter now. Before Danny could argue, his comm unit crackled to life. Danny, where are you? It was Vexthil's voice, strained and urgent. Guest quarters, level 3. Heading for the docks. No, do not go there. The pirates are landing ships in the main bay. Come to cargo storage section 7. I am here with survivors. Danny changed direction. Following the station maps on the wall panels behind him, he could hear weapons fire and the harsh voices of the attackers. Cargo storage section 7 was in the lower levels. Away from the main thoroughfares, Danny arrived to find the door sealed and coated. Vexthil. I'm outside. The door hissed open, and Danny slipped through inside. He found Vexthil along with Katie, Commander Frank Hudson from Station Security, and about 15 other people. Most were civilians, but a few wore the uniforms of various diplomatic services. Danny thanked the ancestors. Vexthil pulled him aside. What's happening out there? Nothing good. Commander Hudson answered. He was a stocky man with gray hair and a bleeding wound on his shoulder. We've got at least 50 pirates on the station. Maybe more. They're rounding up ambassadors and high-value targets. For what? Katie asked. Ransom, most likely. Hudson grimaced. Take a bunch of diplomats hostage. Demand payment from their governments. By the time anyone organizes a rescue, they'll be gone. Why attack here, though? One of the other civilians asked. Because we're neutral, Vexthil said bitterly. No military presence. Light security. Everyone assumes no one would dare attack because it would unite all the governments against them. Clearly someone dared, Hudson said. And we're sitting in a storage room with no weapons and no plan. Danny was looking around the cargo section. It was full of containers waiting for pickup. Supplies for the station, personal belongings of diplomats. Katie. Some of these are containers, aren't they? Katie's eyes went wide. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. What? Vexthil looked between them. Danny has a habit of keeping extra cargo. Katie explained. Stuff that's not exactly on the manifest. You're a smuggler? Hudson looked shocked. I prefer the term flexible merchant. Danny said, and right now I'm a flexible merchant who might have weapons in container. B-17. They found the container, and Danny keyed in his private code. Inside were crates of medical supplies, spare parts, and underneath it all, 3 cases of military-grade rifles and ammunition. I knew I liked you, Hudson said. Grabbing a rifle, Danny distributed the weapons to those who knew how to use them. It wasn't many himself. Katie, Hudson, 2 of the diplomats who had military backgrounds. And surprisingly, Vexthal. I was a soldier before I was an ambassador, Vexthal said, checking the rifle with practiced ease. I have not forgotten how. Okay, so we've got 6 people with guns, Danny said. What's the plan? Hudson winced as he moved his injured shoulder. The main security station is 3 levels up. If we can get there, we can restore the defense systems, seal off sections, maybe even get a distress signal out. And if we can't? One of the unarmed civilians asked nervously. Then we hide here and hope the pirates don't find us before help arrives. Danny looked at the frightened faces around him. These were diplomats, clerks, civilians who come to Harmony 9 because it was supposed to be safe. We get to that security station, he said firmly. Hudson, can you walk? I can run if I have to. They organized the group, putting the unarmed in the middle with the armed people surrounding them. Danny took point with Vexthal, their rifles ready. The corridors outside were chaos. They could hear fighting in the distance and twice had to hide while groups of pirates ran past. The raiders were a mix of species, humans and aliens working together in their greed. Danny felt sick watching them. These were people who'd chosen violence for profit. They made it 2 levels up before running into trouble. A group of 5 pirates came around the corner, weapons drawn, hostages. One of them shouted. Danny fired first. Years of training taking over, the pirates scattered. Returning fire plasma bolts scorched the walls, and Danny heard someone scream behind him. Vexthal was firing with precision, his forearms giving him an advantage in handling the weapon. Katie flanked to the right, driving 2 pirates back. The fight lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like hours when it was over. 3 pirates were down, and 2 had fled behind them. One of the diplomats had been hit in the leg. Keep moving, Hudson gasped. They'll come back with more. They half-carried the wounded diplomat up another level. The security station was close now. Danny could see the reinforced door ahead. Then Hudson's comm crackled to life. Security station to any units. We're being overrun, requesting immediate assistance. Moment later, there was an explosion, and the comm went dead. That's not good. Katie said they reached the security station to find the door blown open and 3 dead security officers inside. Pirates had already been here. Hudson went to the main console, his hands shaking as he tried to access the systems. Everything's locked out. They've got control codes. Can you override it? Vexthal asked. Maybe, but it'll take time, and I'd need to access the manual override. It's in the exposed corridor on the other side of this section. There's no cover there. Danny looked at the map Hudson was showing. Override was maybe 50 meters away, but the corridor was wide open. A kill zone. Anyone who went out there would be completely exposed. I will go, Vexthal said immediately. Danny turned to stare at him. Are you crazy? That's suicide. It is the only way to save everyone. Vexthal's voice was calm. And it is how I repay my debt to you, Danny. What are you talking about? I told you, a life debt can only be repaid by saving the life of your savior. Vexthal smiled sadly. You saved my life on Kethro 7. Now I save yours and everyone else here by restoring the defenses. No, Danny said flatly. I won't let you throw your life away. It is not throwing away. It is fulfilling purpose. Vexthal placed one of his hands on Danny's shoulder. You gave me 20 years I would not have had. You gave me a family and a career and meaning. Let me use that gift to protect others. Danny felt like the ground was falling away beneath him. Just found his friend again after 20 years, and now Vexthal wanted to die to repay some cultural debt. There has to be another way. There is not. The longer we wait, the more people die. Katie touched Danny's arm. He's right. Someone has to go, and he's volunteering. Danny looked at his friend. At the determination in those yellow eyes, this wasn't just about dead. He realized this was about who Vexthil was. A warrior who'd become a peacemaker, but was still willing to fight to protect the innocent. Just like on Kethros 7. Just like Danny had been, "I'm going with you," Danny said. "What?" "No, Danny. You don't get to sacrifice yourself alone." Danny cut him off. "We do this together or not at all." Vexthil looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Danny's expression stopped him. "Together then," he agreed, "as brothers." Danny and Vexthil stood at the entrance to the corridor, looking at the 50 meters of open space that separated them from the manual override panel. Somewhere beyond them, they could hear the pirates moving through the station, their harsh voices calling out as they searched for more hostages. "On 3, Danny said quietly. "Wait." Katie grabbed his arm. "You're both idiots if you think I'm letting you run out there without a plan." "What plan?" Hudson asked. "We need to get to that panel, and we need to do it now." Katie was looking at the cargo containers stacked along the walls of the security station. Her eyes had that calculating look Danny had learned to recognize over years of flying together. "These containers," she said. "Some of them are empty, right?" "Probably. Why?" "Because I have an idea that's slightly less suicidal than what you two were planning," she explained quickly, and Danny felt a grin spreading across his face. "That's actually crazy enough to work." High praise coming from the man who ran across a battlefield to save an enemy soldier. Vexthil said dryly. They worked fast. Hudson and the other armed diplomats set up positions covering the corridor, while Danny, Katie, and Vexthil positioned 3 large cargo containers on hover platforms. "Remember," Katie said as she climbed onto her platform, "fast and low. Don't stop moving no matter what." "I know how to pilot a hover platform," Danny protested. "Yeah, but you crashed them a lot." Before Danny could respond, weapons fire erupted from down the corridor. The pirates had spotted them. "Go, go, go!" Hudson shouted, laying down covering. Fire. Danny activated his hover platform and the cargo container shot forward. It wasn't designed for speed, but Katie had overridden the safety limiters. Danny crouched behind the container as plasma bolts hammered into it. The metal heating, but holding to his right. Thol was doing the same, his forearms allowing him to steer while keeping his rifle ready. Katie was on his left. Whooping like this was the best thing she'd ever done. The corridor seemed to stretch forever. Danny heard the container taking hit after hit and hoped it would hold. He fired blindly around the corner, not trying to hit anyone but forcing the pirates to keep there. Heads down 30 meters, 20 meters. A plasma bolt punched through Danny's container, and he felt the heat sear past his cheek. 10 meters. They reached the override panel, and all 3 of them tumbled off their platforms, using the containers as cover, while Hudson and the others kept firing from behind. "Vexthil, you know Kryn systems, right?" Danny shouted over the noise. "Yes, why?" "Because half these controls are in your language." It turned out the manual override required 2 people working in coordination, one on the human systems and one on the Kryn systems. Danny and Vexthil worked side by side, while Katie provided covering fire. "Rerouting power to defense grid," Danny called out, his fingers flying over the console, unlocking weapons authorization. Vexthil responded around them. The station began to hum as systems came back online. Blast doors started closing throughout Harmony 9, sealing off sections and trapping pirates in isolated areas. The defense turrets activated, their targeting systems identifying hostile forces. "It's working," Katie shouted. Then Danny heard a sound that made his heart stop. Harsh click of a weapon being charged right behind them. He turned to see a pirate had flanked them, his rifle aimed directly at Vexthil's back. Danny didn't think he threw himself sideways, slamming into Vexthil and knocking him aside. Just as the pirate fired, The plasma bolt caught Danny in the shoulder, and he went down hard. Pain exploding through his body, Thal roared. A sound Danny had never heard from him, and fired back. The pirate dropped. Danny! Vexthal was beside him, his hands pressing against the wound. You fool! You beautiful fool! Why did you do that? Couldn't let you die, Danny gasped. Not after all this. Katie was there too. A medical kit out and her hands steady despite the chaos around them. It's bad but not fatal if we get him to. Medical fast. The station's defense systems were fully active now, and the tide of battle was turning. Pirates who weren't already captured or dead were trying to flee to their ships. Hudson's voice came through the com. All hostile vessels are being tracked. Station security is regaining control. We did it, people. Vexthal was cradling Danny's head, all four of his arms supporting the injured human. You saved me again, he said, his voice breaking. No, Danny managed a weak smile. You saved me. You and Katie, you got those systems online, but I was supposed to save you. That was the whole point, the debt. There is no debt. Danny interrupted. Pain was making everything fuzzy, but he needed to say this. There never was a debt. Vexthal, I didn't save you so you'd owe me something. I saved you because it was right. But in my culture, Danny cut in again. Friendship means you don't keep score. Medical teams were arriving now. Human and Kryn doctors working together. They lifted Danny onto a stretcher, but he grabbed Vexthal's hand. You don't owe me your life, Danny said. You owe me to live it well. To keep being an ambassador, keep building bridges. That's how you repay me. Vexthal was crying openly now, tears running down his scaled face. I understand, he said softly. Finally. I understand what you tried to tell me on Kethru 7. Mercy is not a debt to repay, but a gift to pass forward. Now you're getting it. Danny's vision was getting dark around the edges. Tell my brother I'm sorry I didn't write more. You will tell him yourself, Vexthal said firmly. You are not allowed to die. I forbid it. Danny laughed and then groaned as the movement hurt. Okay. I'll try to stick around. The next few hours were a blur of surgery and medication when Danny finally woke up. He was in a medical bay with Katie asleep in a chair beside his bed. Vexthal was there too, looking exhausted but alert. How long was I out? Danny asked. 18 hours, Vexthal said. The doctors say you will recover fully. The wound was clean. Good. That's good. Katie stirred and opened her eyes. Oh, thank God, you're awake. I was getting tired of watching you drool. I do not drool. You absolutely do. They filled him in on what he'd missed. The pirates had been captured or killed. The station was secure, and ambassadors from a dozen governments were calling for stronger security measures. You are being called a hero, Vexthal said. Several governments want to honor you. Please tell me you said no. I said you would prefer to be left alone. But I may have agreed to one small ceremony on your behalf. Danny groaned. And there is something else. Vexthal continued. The Kryn government has asked if you would consider becoming an official liaison between Earth and the Kryn homeworld. What? Why would they want that? Because you understand us, Vexthal said simply. You have proven twice now that you see us as people, not just as aliens or former enemies. That is the kind of bridge builder we need. Danny looked at Katie. What do you think? I think hauling cargo is getting boring anyway. She grinned. And I think you'd be good at it. I would be honored to work with you, Vexthal added. As colleagues. As friends. Not because of any debt, but because I trust you. Danny thought about it. For 20 years he'd been running from his past, trying to forget the war and the things he'd done. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe the answer wasn't to forget, but to remember and do better. Okay, he said, finally, I'll do it. But Katie comes with me as my assistant. Senior assistant. Katie corrected. Senior assistant. Danny agreed. Vexthal's face lit up with joy. This is wonderful news. I will begin arrangements immediately. There is so much to do. So many people for you to meet. After I get out of this bed, Danny interrupted. Even liaisons need to heal. Of course. Of course, over the next few days as Danny recovered. He had a lot of time to think. He thought about the scared kid he'd pulled from under that beam 20 years ago, he thought. About the ambassador the kid had become. He thought about how one moment of compassion had rippled outward, affecting not just 2 lives, but potentially thousands, when he was finally released from medical. Vexthal was waiting with the honor blade. I believe this belongs to you, he said. Handing it over, Danny took it and felt its familiar weight. You know, I think I'm starting to understand why you wanted to give this to me. Oh? It's not about the debt or repayment. It's about connection. About saying that we're family even though we're from different worlds. Vexthal smiled. You are learning. I have a good teacher. They stood together looking out at the stars beyond the station viewport. Do you ever think about that day on Kethro 7? Vexthal asked. Sometimes, Danny admitted. I used to try not to. But now I'm glad it happened. Not the war, but that moment. That choice. As am I, Vexthal said. You taught me that even in darkness, compassion can survive, and I hope I taught you that your actions matter. That one person can change the universe. You definitely taught me that. Katie joined them, carrying official-looking documents. Okay, I've got your liaison credentials, travel permits, and about 50 invitations to diplomatic functions. 50? Danny looked horrified. Don't worry, I'll handle most of them. Katie laughed. You just have to show up and be charming. I'm not charming. You saved an alien in the middle of a war zone and became best friends with an ambassador. Vexthal pointed out. You are more charming than you know. Danny looked at his 2 friends and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Felt hopeful the war was over and couldn't be undone. But the future was unwritten, and if one act of mercy could create an ambassador, who knew what else was possible? Come on, he said. Let's go build some bridges.